Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my God of War Chains of Olympus pain plus no damage run. We are making our way to, I believe it's is it the Temple of Persephone? But before we can do that, we have to fight a bunch of these dark satyrs. And all the same things we've been doing for this entire run will apply here, guys. We're going to be launching with square triangle. Sometimes we'll launch with ascension. Sometimes we'll do a jumping triangle. And then we'll go from there and we will smash them into the ground with Orion's harpoon, or we will do some kind of throw looping, or some combination of the two. And after a while in this game, you get a really good feel for how many of these you need to do. And you can tell when they're going to die. And then you can do things like that, which adds a little bit of flair, which is quite cool. I love the animations with the grabs in this game. I love the animations with the grabs in all the God of War games, except for the new ones, because the new ones are fucking terrible. I don't understand how they can go from grabbing like this to something so trash that new game is. Oh, and full disclosure here, guys, again. I mentioned this earlier on, but you might not have heard it. I segmented this fight because I kept getting physics bugs, and the fight is really hard as well. I think this is the worst fight in the game, and I don't like it at all. But this is 2 Sphinxes in a row. It is essentially a Morpheus beast that takes 2,000 times more damage, and it's completely fucking boring, and I hate it. And the best way to do it is to bait it over to the stairwell and get it stuck on the stairs, but I'm not going to do that, guys. I'm going to fight this guy wherever he goes, and one of my best runs in this encounter was when I pushed him to the other side of the room, and the satyrs were bombing him the whole time while I was attacking him, and it made him die really quickly. But I would be lying if I said that this wasn't the most annoying thing I've done in this game outside of Persephone, because it absolutely was. But there's a few things you learn by fighting him. The first one is what I mentioned earlier, which is if you do Plume of Prometheus's, and if he dodges, you finish them, and if he tries to attack you, you block, you can get him in this loop of he will never do anything else. And then if you do it the right way, you can also kill the satyrs at the same time, and sometimes the satyrs will help you kill him. So it's this wonderful, natural kind... This is it, guys. This is the bug I mentioned. So just then, he's like in fucking Weird Town. All the good attempts I had in this fight, he went off the screen, and when he came back down, he was in an attack animation. And if I stood there blocking, I got bombed. So it was like an impossible situation, and it ruined too many runs, so I just said, fuck this is trash. I wasn't having any fun. But now you've seen it, you have an idea of what was happening. It was really goofy. And then also be very careful here, because I had a run where I thought I could grab the Sphinx, and I went to grab him, and I bounced off the satyr, and I couldn't get the grab, I couldn't recover, and he punched me. So the reason I took so long to kill him then is because I'd been bitten before this, because this fight is garbage. But when he dies, the second one will turn up, and then you have an opportunity now to go and take on some of the bombers. And I'm just going to bounce the bombers into some Orion harpoons, and we're going to try and get this guy back into another pattern. But what I noticed here is for some reason, this dude loves to jump. This one jumped way more than the first one. And I only just figured out on this fight that you could do the double jump with the right timing to stop him from hitting you, because I thought that jumping attack, that grab was just unavoidable. But it turns out it isn't. And you can also tell when he's going to do it. Right now, that was it then. Did you see his movement? Whenever he dodges to the left and then dodges to the right, he will always try and do the jumping grab, unless you flinch him. And of course, if you do a grab on an enemy, you'll pacify him, so he'll stop doing it. But whenever he jumps like that, back and forth, he's telegraphing he's going to jump at you. And the way to stop him doing it is to be aggressive or to interrupt him. If you don't, the grab's coming. And unless your timing is good in your space... Look, do you see the guy? You see the satyr going crazy? This room sucks. If you've never tried this room on emulator, try it, because it's fucking weird. But now we're back into the standard loop against the Sphinx, and you can do this for free. And this is not necessarily the most difficult fight mechanically, but it's so easy to get hit by the bombs, because if the bomb detonates near you, it will hurt you, and you spend the whole time holding your shield up hoping you don't get hit. And sometimes it feels like they throw bombs at you from off screen, which I just don't agree with. It's really lame, actually. But just a show of hands, guys, does anybody else think this monster has too much life? I thought there was something wrong with the game when I was first doing it. I was like, why is he not dying? This is so boring. Like, this is so much worse than almost anything else in the game, because this enemy is that uninteresting. Like, I don't know how people enjoy this. I just don't. know? And a lot of people leave comments like that on my challenge runs. They're like, why would you do this? It's like, usually I would say, because it's fun, because it's enjoyable, there's something cool there, but this, nope. This to me, this is God of War at its worst. Like, the only way this gets any worse is if this monster has an unblockable move, which it does, but you can shut it down by being aggressive, and then that's the end of it. And it really doesn't look that bad, but try it, guys. It's awful. That fight sucks. Do not like it. And it's a sign of things to come as well, because this temple, you see these rooms? You have to fight the biggest enemies in the game in multiple numbers in rooms as small as this. And each one of them is punctuated with one of these Medusa rooms with the dark satyrs and the harpies or the harplings. This enemy is interesting as well because it's one of the only flying enemies that's actually hit me in this game. So be very careful with these creatures because they're tricky. But I quite like these rooms because you can use the Medusa heads to stone some people, and I think that that's one of the best mechanics in God of War. And one of the problems with using these challenge run restrictions is that you don't really get to use some of that stuff. Like, I was fighting the Cerberus breeder in God of War 1 under pain restrictions, and oh my god, that fight, dude. That fight feels impossible until they give it you. And you can turn them to stone and break them. Like, it doesn't even compute, does it, how easy that is? Like, you can literally freeze that monster and shatter it before it's even spat out a pup. And it's free. It's literally free. You don't even have to attack it, really. And to go from what you have to do to win with no tools to being able to do that is insane. And the closest thing you get on any kind of no upgrade or pain is throwing enemies off the edges, like the satyrs when you dunk them in the valleys and stuff. Like, you just don't get that kind of satisfaction. Because most things have to be fought in very specific ways. Like stuff like the Sand Kings. You know, I was watching Reuters run when I was recording this, and I didn't actually think I was going to do God of War 1 because I don't really like God of War 1 after Athens. You know, when you hit the desert, after that the whole game just annoys me. Because it's good fight, shit fight, exploration, puzzles, platforming, lame, shit fight, good fight. And it's just like trying to find fucking treasure in the desert. It's just too Tomb Raider for me. That's my issue. Speaking of issues in fights. Oh boy. So, you either know or you don't know. But this room is bad. This room is really hard. This is easily one of the hardest fights in the game, just because of hitboxes and spacing. So at the beginning here, there's a bunch of harpies. It'd be really nice if this game had collision and if you could throw these, because you could kill the Cyclopses really quickly, but you can't. So the general idea is clear out all the harpies and then take on the armoured Cyclops. The armoured Cyclops takes a couple of Plume of Prometheuses to break his armour, and then you can start using a combination of Plumes and Spirit of Hercules to kill him. This enemy takes an absurd amount of damage. It is preposterously beefy for no real reason. And his moveset is essentially the enlisting of two moves. One of them is his 3-hit combo, which looks like that. The second one is a 2-hit combo that looks a little bit like that, but has a different ender. And that's all he really does. I could not get this monster to slam the ground at all. And I got really sad about that because I thought that manipulation on the Cyclops was something that was going to make the Cyclops as my favourite in the series. Because my favourite Cyclops in God of War is the armoured Cyclops from God of War 1. But he has a glaring weakness, and he's too fair, and I think that that's a problem. And if you fight him from a distance, he's dangerous as hell because he's got a really fast move that happens while he's moving. But if you fight him up close, you realise he can't hit you. And I would change that monster so that if you're behind him for too long, he does a move that's quite quick and horizontal and kind of gets you off him. I would give him something to get me off him, so I have to move away and respect him and then put myself back in a difficult position. But as it stands, he's the most fair enemy in the game. And every time he turns up, I really like him, because I know how he works. Now this guy is not that. This is the 2-hitter here. See that? That's the 2 hits. This guy is just no fun allowed. No fun allowed in a tiny room. And if you're looking for a monster that's going to hit you and cause difficulty that way, this is a great enemy. Because this guy, when he wants to, will shrug off your combos, hyper armor, and hit you with a hit that never hit you. His hitboxes are very generous, they're total bullshit if you ask me. I don't like them at all. The only hitbox I like is the clap. Everything else is trash. And then they've given him 1,000,000 HP. And it just becomes an effort in futility of, do you know how to manipulate boundaries? Do you know how to manipulate the AI of this monster? And do you know when to attack and when to move? And all of these are skills that you learn when you play, but I don't think they compound into anything really that interesting. And it's really funny too, because after this, they throw you another Cyclops later on in a room with some, I think it's some Gorgons and some Harpies, but it's only one. And it's like, why couldn't this fight be like that? You know? Like, I said it earlier, why couldn't this fight have normal Cyclopses that can be looped with movement, and then that other area that was bigger have the armoured boys? Like, I just think if you flip those enemies, it would work so much better. But this is where you get the shock of your life, because when you kill the first armoured guy, 2 of them turn up, and this is where the fight gets really, 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 really boring. Because all you do is stun them with the plumes, and then the moment you're in a position where you need to actually be in a better location, you use movement to get around them. Or you use iframes like I did just then. And because these enemies are designed very well when it comes to their AI, they do this thing where when one of them is attacking, the other one kind of moves off a bit, you know, to give you some space. So you can pretty much keep one of them off camera the whole time, because they've been designed in a way where they knew that this was kind of shitty. They knew that this was not, you know, ideal. So they definitely programmed the Cyclopses to give you some space, and it's enough space to win. But it's just not that fun. And I'm going to do this manipulation you saw me do then. I'm going to do a bunch of attacks until he gets closer, and then I'm going to move out of the way of his attacks, and then the whole time this is happening, the other guy's going to be off camera, so he's not a problem. But right there, I didn't realise where he was, and I moved into a bad spot, so I had to recover. But I've fought these guys for a decent amount of time, so I'm pretty confident in my movement against them. And every time you get the opportunity to do the bigger version of the plume, every time you get Spirit of Hercules out, you are one step closer to winning. But I would be lying if I said that I thought that this was good design. I think it's elegant in AI, and I think that it's a problem that can be solved. But this, to me, if you cut these enemies' HP, I would cut their life more than in half, dude. I'd cut their life, like, I would remove 75% of this monster's HP. I would. Because I just don't think it's interesting. Like, I would make it so that if you hit them with 2 mega plumes, you get the... Oh, here we go. This is when the physics starts going weird. That didn't happen too much in this room, thankfully. But, like, if you hit them with... For instance, you know the Cyclops where you have to press circle 3 times to kill them? I would go 2 mega plumes, circle prompt. So it's 6 mega plumes to win. That's what I'd do. Like, if you have to make them a bit more aggressive or, you know, something like that to compensate, then do that, you know? I would make it so that maybe 3 Plume of Prometheuses gets a prompt. So that when you either do Mega Plumes and you save yourself 1 hit, or you do Plumes and you get there a bit later maybe. And hell, Square Triangle. I'd make it so that, you know, you do like a handful of Square Triangles, you get a prompt. Like, this guy should kill you in 1 hit. Kill us in 1 fucking hit, dude. But don't take 30 fucking Spirit of Herculeses. Because it's boring. Like, I'd rather die instantly. I'd rather this guy looked at me and I died than have to hit him this much. And I know that this is absolute projection, guys. This is what I don't like about action games 101. I can't stand hitting things for 5 minutes. It bores me to tears. And everything else about the Cyclopses I like. I like how they look, I like their animations, I like how you kill them. I think they're really cool, casually. But when you do something like this, you realise that all you're really doing is you are repeatedly staggering a big enemy that has no chance to hurt you. Like, it's like going into the Chalice Dungeons in Bloodborne with an unupgraded weapon. You know, when you get to depth 5, and you're taking on bosses that have got 30,000 HP, like, what are you really doing? You're doing 100 damage a hit. Like, it's madness. But once you kill one of them, the fight becomes a lot more simple. But because the room is so small, you can still make mistakes. Show of hands though, folks. How many people think that that was how that should have been designed? I'm really curious as to people and what you think. Do you think that this was like the best way they could have done it? And if so, why? You know? How would you have designed it to change this? Because my only real issue is their HP. And even then, I think the HP in God of War 1 Cyclopses is probably worse. It feels worse, but it might not be. And to give you an idea, guys, for some progress, for people who are interested, I've just done the three Sand Kings in front of Pandora's box. And that's where I am on my pain run. And it's the first time I've showcased using iframes with the Blade of Artemis, because I actually thought it was against pain rules to use that. And then I went back and I watched a video with Reuter, and he was talking about it, and he was using it, so I'm assuming that that's not forbidden. Again, it can be difficult to know what the rules are because there's no like set in stone glossary somewhere. Hopefully that changes in time. I feel like God of War could have a Bible written someplace, and it could have every piece of information ever gathered, and it would be the most amazing document. And I think a lot of people would really appreciate it, but as it stands now, it's literally a human being. And you know his name, I don't need to say his name, he's a legend. But all we have to do now is as many Spirit of the Hercules as it takes, and I didn't count how many it takes here, but I know it's a lot. And you can do a couple of hits afterwards too. At the end of the plume, if you hold triangle, you will do an ascension on the end of it. But the reason you don't want to do it sometimes is because if you get that AI where when you hit them with the plume, they use an attack and they hyper armor. If you do that, they'll hit you when you do ascension, and ascension has some of the biggest recovery frames of any move. And in God of War 1, it's fucking suicide. Because I really like holding triangle at the end of combos to get the big hit and then the uppercut. And the amount of times I've paid for it is off the charts. Like, you just can't add it up, it's so many. But I was doing that fight, you know, against all the gold soldiers and against the handful of satyrs in that room in the Cliffs of Madness. And I did not remember how beefy the satyrs were, dude. Oh my god, the satyrs take a pounding. And I know there's a sequence in Hell coming up where you have to fight a dozen of them and they're together, 2 satyrs at once. And I don't think you can ring them out, which is going to be a problem. Because that monster, dude. What were they thinking? Like, aren't the satyrs meant to be like mischief makers in Greek mythology? They're not fighters. You know, they're not like flamboyant, crazy, twirly boys. They're meant to be like minstrels and shit. And yet they are the most evil enemy. So evil, dude. All kinds of input reads and like guard counters and stuff. But this is the end of the fight, guys. This is a hard fight. It's a very difficult fight. And it was another one of those fights as well that I thought I wasn't going to be able to do. So I saved on the final Cyclops. I dropped to save state. And then I didn't need it. And I was really happy. And it goes back to this save state buff that I talked about. Which I want to talk about that as well, because you might be new to my channel and you might be wondering, like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You're doing a challenge run and you're save stating? Doesn't that go against the whole point of it? And I would say sometimes it does. It depends on what you're doing, though. But in this game, for anybody wondering about the logistics of it, because this is not on hardware, I don't have to put up with the shitty checkpoints. I can do what I want, basically. And depending on how I want to do it, depends on where I put them. But fundamentally, it's the same thing that I did with God Hand. I put the save states where the checkpoints tend to be, or at least where the start of the fights are. If the game is good, it gives you a checkpoint at the start of the fight. This game is kind of bad for that. It tends to make you have to walk back into rooms, and then rooms happen or cutscenes play, and then you fight. So what I did is every fight at the beginning of it, unless it was like a designated gauntlet where you do multiple waves and stuff, I put the save state there. And then when I took damage, I press reload, and it puts me exactly where the start of the fight is. Look at that, by the way. Did you see that? That's what was happening to the Sphinx. What do you do to that, dude? How do you fight that? That's just something else, dude. A guy literally beamed up to the Starship Enterprise. Fortunately, this room is kind of long, but it's not difficult if you play it really safe, like I'm going to do it. And that's what I do when I get the opportunity to do it. I put the save states where the checkpoints are, and it lets me restart immediately. If I'm having a bad run, I can restart. If I get hit, I can restart. If I don't like what I've recorded, I can restart, and it's ultimate control. It's absolutely beautiful, and I really love it. The problem is, there are a lot of channels on YouTube that are using these states to tell you they've done something really impressive and really, really hard, and they're not being honest. And I don't ever want to be that person that doesn't tell you guys that this is segmented. You know, I don't want you to think I did this in one attempt. I am not that good. Xemnas is. Go watch him. That guy's a god. That guy is absurdly good. It takes a ton of time to do what he's doing, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. You know? Like, that guy's not using save states. He's not on emulators. The guy's on hardware. He's recording his fucking TV. And he knows everything about the game. It's beautiful to watch. Absolutely fantastic channel. Go check that guy. You know? He is a big dick of God of War. I am not. I'm coming here to have some fun, make a cool project for YouTube, and that's what we're doing. But the thing here is, and I say this on everything I make, if you're going to use any kind of tool assistance that enables you to either have more fun or a more enjoyable time, just be honest. Just tell people, and then people understand. And if somebody calls you a bitch or calls you out and says that that's cheating, then you just kind of go, okay, dude, that's fair. And you move on, you know? At the end of the day, if you believe in it and you enjoy it and it's adhering to your rules, there's nothing wrong with it. And I see it like speedrunning. If you want to speedrun a game, you can speedrun a game. If you want to compete seriously in speedrunning, then you have to speedrun the game in a different way. You have to do it where everyone else is competing. Many places don't like emulators because of save states and because of cheating and because of all that kind of stuff, so instead, they play on hardware. If you want to make videos about a game and be the upper echelon in it and show people that you are the fucking god, you are the king, you have to do what those people are doing. You have to do no emulators, no save states, you know, no shenanigans, nothing like that. It has to be adhered to their standards. And that's what happens with games, guys. When you're doing challenge runs, you make your own challenge run up and you honor your own rules. When you're doing someone else's challenge run, you have to honor their rules, you know? And that's just the way it is. And if you're doing it for fun and you can be a little bit more relaxed on it, then more power to you. Some people don't think you can do that. Some people think it's all or nothing. You know, the internet's a fascinating place. There are those people that think if a game has a quick save, you shouldn't use it because they call it save scumming. And to them it is, you know. I don't think that's save scumming. I think save scumming is what I do on Persephone in Phase 2. Because I save stated a lot on that fight because it's awful. But I'm not here telling you guys that I have the best Persephone fight on the internet because I don't. I don't even count it. Like, if it was up to me, guys, I wouldn't have done it because I just think it's shit and I hate it. But some people want, you know, the full run to be there, so I did it for the sake of that, but I didn't like it, I didn't enjoy it, and that's why I segmented it. And I segmented it a dozen times, you know, be under no illusion, guys. I did a few cycles of hitting her, and I pressed save state. And then when I fucked up inevitably, because it's a really awkward, lame, boring fight, I reloaded and I was back from that point. Because if I would have had to have done no damage on her from the very beginning of that second phase, I would have never done it. Because I don't want to do it, you know? And you can take that as I don't have the skill or I don't have the knowledge or whatever you want to take that as. That's just the way it is, you know? I'll own that because it's not for me. And in God of War, I'm not doing the clones. That is because I'm not good enough and because I have to put a lot of time in. And right now, there's too many things to do to put that kind of time in. One day, though, I might go back and have a crack at it. But there's something with God of War that really bugs me, and that is all the hardest fights in the series have nothing to do with simply surviving. They always have a gimmick that makes them way more difficult than they need to be. And this fight, by the way, guys, you're going to hear some vengeful Spartan on this because I don't even know what happened with OBS, but I ended up getting a problem with the audio. And I didn't change anything. I didn't do a Windows update. I didn't do anything to my mixer, but for some reason the audio levels of the game were not going into OBS and I didn't notice, so this whole fight was muted. And instead, I didn't want this to be silenced, so I put in the song from the first game and it's amazing. So if you're wondering why the music is crazy right now and you can't hear all the banging, it's because of that. And this fight is a bit of an endurance fight. You have to take on, I think it's 3 Minotaurs, and you take on a bunch of these satyrs in between. But this is one of those fights where once you're comfortable with this and you take it slow, you'll be okay. I thought I was going to have to segment this because I thought I was going to get really bored of it, but I didn't need to. But back on that topic of, you know, you need to do it the way that you enjoy. Now, if you want to have the most integral runs, the runs that are held as the gold standard, then you have to be the golden boy on those runs. If you're doing a personal challenge run, the only person you need to please is yourself. And I've had a lot of conversations with some very gifted players about what no damage means and about what these runs are, and everybody has a different opinion of it. Like, some people think you have to do it single segment. Some people think if you take any damage, you have to restart the game. You know? It all depends on what you want to do. And I have crazy respect for anybody that does that, because I can't do that. That's not my skill ceiling. You know, that's not where my talents are. I'm very much a sprinter rather than a marathon runner. And I think that's okay too, you know, it wouldn't be for everything if it was all the same. But usually games, like, this is one of the reasons why you've noticed that I talk so much about checkpoints, because checkpoints are essentially what you're always fighting against. And when checkpoints are good, you can have a really, really good time with the fight and a really good time with the challenge, because you don't spend most of it resenting a part of it that has nothing to do with it. And one of the reasons I really like emulators is because they enable you to do that. They enable you to govern where you want those checkpoints to be and how hard you want those checkpoints to be. If you want to take on 3 fights in a row in 3 different rooms and turn them into some kind of crazy gauntlet, you can do that. And that's awesome. If you want to turn that fight into after every enemy you save state so you don't have to kill him, so you can completely compartmentalize it, you can do that. You know, if you want to do these things is up to you, because everybody sees this differently. It's very subjective. But there's no right and there's no wrong answers. But what there is, I think, is a level of transparency that needs to be adhered to. Do not sell segmented runs as single segment. Do not sell your runs as world firsts and like absolute mastery when you've cheated. Or at least, even if you've not cheated, you've cheated in someone else's eyes. And there are many names on the internet that you can mention where they've got into trouble for stuff like this. And one of the big ones was a guy called Horisto, who was cheating leaderboards, for God's sake. Cheating all kinds of things, using like no-hit trainers on, I think, Hollow Knight, all kinds of horrible stuff. It's like, dude, there's nothing wrong with using some kind of tool assistance to do something cool. But there's everything wrong if you're going to pass that off against these people that are competing 100% legitimate. Like, it would be like going into a natural bodybuilding competition and you've took steroids. Like, why would you do that? You know, it's one of the problems that I have with the current issue with changing genders when it comes to sports and competition. You know, I want people to do what they can and to be happy if they can, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. But do you know what I don't want? People who were men and grew up with like 30 years of testosterone and muscle building to be lifting weights in women's divisions and breaking world records. Because that's like using fucking save states, dude. That's the IRL equivalent to like running a fucking trainer. And I just don't agree with it. And I know that that's, you know, very political and very, very sensitive, but it's how I feel. You know, to me, I like it when people do things I can't do. I like doing things my own way, you know. That's where I get excited. But there's been a lot of people, there are a lot of channels, I talk about it quite a lot, this idea of those old school channels that do all the arcade bosses no damage. And they're save stating. You know, they're not doing all of those fights legitimately because they're so fucking hard. You know, but they have this technology and it's hard to spot if they're a good editor. One of the best compliments you can give me is that I'm a better editor than I am a player. Because it's true, you know. I'm not that good at these games, but I can make myself look better just by getting rid of all the times I fucked up. Anyhow, that's the end of that boring fight. Now it's time for 2 Gorgons and a bunch of Harpies. I like this room a lot. I think this is the room with the Cyclops in it, the armoured Cyclops. So one of my criticisms of God of War, which I think it could do a lot better, is I think sometimes they don't use the pantheon of enemies that they've developed as well as they could. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Ooh, this is new as well. This particular version of a Gorgon, I think she's called the Gorgon Queen. She has the ability to grab you and turn you to stone. And when she does this, you can mash the buttons and get out of it because it's not too bad. I think you can launch her with Ascension when she does that, if you spot it soon enough. You can also jump it, so you can do a double jump timed well and she won't hit you. And the strategy here is the same as it was before, guys. Do square triangle, hold triangle, and then slam them into the ground with Orion's Harpoon or jump grab them. That's all you have to do. Gorgons in this game are free. Gorgons in God of War 1 are way harder than these fellas. It's really funny too because they don't move very fast, but they attack faster than anything's ever attacked in human history. Like, ooh, there's another weird physics bug again. Emulators, am I right? So funny. Again, emulators, did you see that, guys? I got a free launch. How weak is that? But one of the things I'm interested with now, like, you can play this on PSP, you can play this on emulator, and you can play it on PS3, can't you, with that version that they made? Are there many version differences between actual PSP and the PlayStation 3 equivalent? Does anybody know that, guys? Has anybody got like a list or a glossary of all the version differences? Because I bet there are some. Because just playing this, I noticed so many weird like physics bugs and moments where the AI probably was maybe a little squirrely. I've really noticed it in God of War 1. I'm super looking forward to seeing if anybody can understand what's going on, because I certainly don't. But to put a bow on the topic of tool-assisted things and save states and convenience tools and whatnot, I think we need to destigmatize the use of them when they're used in the right way. I think that's the biggest enemy right now. It's the idea that people think if you use a trainer, you're always cheating, you know? And I can understand that objectively. I can understand like the overarching idea, because it's technically cheat software, isn't it? It's almost like it's a problem with the name of it rather than the intention. But I always look into, well, what are they doing, you know? What are they doing when they use the softwares? For instance, people speed games up now, guys. I don't know if you've heard of this. I saw it quite recently. It's something that I didn't think to do. And then I've done it myself a little bit, and it's really fun. So people will use the cheat engine to change the game speed. And what you can do on some of them, if you're clever enough, which I'm absolutely not, you can move the game speed up, but keep the player speed normal. And that's what people have been doing. So you move as you always move, but they can be a lot faster. And you can go 110%, you can go 120, you can go up to like 250 if you're a lunatic and you're really good and you know what you're doing. Like, you can play these games again under challenge restrictions that you've invented that involve using cheat software. I used to do challenge runs of Vanquish using infinite ammunition so that I didn't have to worry about running out of bullets. And I beat the game on God hard using nearly all the weapons in that game. And it was really fun. But people will think you're cheating if you do that because you're using unlimited ammo, you know? And this is where it gets really interesting and really philosophical. Like, we need to be aggressive and be harsh against people actively cheating. But I think we need to see more leniency in people using these softwares to do cool things. Because, like, look at the shmup community. There are a lot of people that believe that if you don't play shoot-em-ups in the arcade, you're not playing them correctly and you're indeed subverting the purity of what they are. I know that sounds insane, but it's actually what some people think. There are some people who do not think you should use practice mode because it's not real, it's not legitimate. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. This is an old way of thinking, and it exists in every version of every game. There will always be an old guard and a new guard, and those two things will never agree. But I'm going to have to stop the tangent for a moment here, guys, because this area is a nightmare. So this is the Groves of Persephone, and you have to execute these, like, spectral Elysium people in order to get some of your abilities back. And it starts off as kind of an interactive cutscene moment, and then it turns into a nightmare. Because they drop a bunch of the... I don't know if they are a version of the Shades, or if they're some kind of hoplite, or if they're like a derivative of the Fire Sentries. But this enemy is ludicrously quick and very aggressive. So what you want to do here is you want to run around poking with light attacks to kill the passengers, and if you can, you want to launch these hoplite dudes, and then you want to hit them with Orions as much as you can until they die. I do not recommend using roll cancels in this room at all, because this enemy runs faster than you roll. I actually recommend moving normally so you can block immediately. And that's one of the best ways to move, I found. Because when I was rolling, I tended to get hit on the recovery a lot. Turns out as well that this is one of the strangest fights in the game. Because you don't have to finish it, you don't have to kill everybody. You just kind of do this, get your abilities back, and then you can leave. And you want to do that too, because if you stay in this room and you fight them, it's really easy to just get hit by them charging at you from off screen. And throwing them takes, I think it takes about 5 throws to kill each of them. So it takes a long time to just get rid of them, and it's very boring. But right now, you can actually leave. If you go towards that stairwell up there, you can get out of this situation completely. But I am going to try and kill some of them, because they're just annoying. But the best strategy, it seems, is to bounce them all. If you can get them all bounced at the same time, you can just hurt them with rebouncers, and you don't have to worry about how fast they are. But if you can't do that, throwers are your next best friend. And I'm going to throw the shit out of them. Because throwing pacifies the rest of them, and of course it enables you to safely move towards this doorway here. But they charge at you from off camera, it feels like, and you get hit by bullshit. And there's times in God of War where you feel like you're holding block, and sometimes you still get hit. It's like you get hit in the animation of putting your guard up. And I don't really agree with that at all. There's so many times where I feel like I'm blocking and I'm still getting hit. And I don't know if that's like emulation latency or something weird, but it never feels earned. It always feels shitty. But just defend, grab them in between their block strings, and then if you can Orion them, do that. But as soon as I clear these guys out, I'm just going to leave. I'm not really interested in doing the whole fight there, because I don't know how long it is, but I would imagine it's a pain in the ass. And then we get the final gauntlet before the end of the game, which starts off with, I think these are hoplites, some hoplite sentries, or hoplite archers, and standard hoplites. And the archers go down in a simple execution, and their friends have the same moveset as the creature we've just been fighting, but they're nowhere near as aggressive. Do you see this? He has a shield which you have to break with the plumes, which I like. In God of War 1, there's a really confusing enemy who has a shield. And he has no armor on. And sometimes you can grab him and throw him, and sometimes you bounce off him, and I don't really get that. Like, sometimes you have to break his shield to throw him, and sometimes you don't. And I was bumping into that the other day, just being like, why does this work like this? And he's one of the only enemies in the game that you can throw without setting it up, outside of, you know, the very beginning of the ship where you take on those soldiers that can be easily thrown. And I do think God of War 1 should have used those soldiers more in the fights, because once you get those gold guys, it's like they forget those soldiers existed. And it would have been nice to have a combination of the smaller guys and the gold guys, but maybe they panicked because they thought people would just throw spam. But people throw spam anyway, you know? And then of course right now we have a Sphinx, which, if you haven't discovered my hatred for this enemy yet, I will reinforce it, because this thing is beefy. And the strategy is simple. You do Plume of Prometheus, and if he dashes to the side, you finish it, and if he attacks you, you interrupt it with a block. And that's all you do. And as long as he doesn't do that double dash away from you before his big jumping grab, you are completely safe. And this is just an effort in futility and tedium and nothing less. And I would love to redesign this monster because it's just garbage. You know, it looks great. It's this kind of smoky, husky, saber-toothed tiger, and then all it does is repeatedly spam the same move and every so often cheese you with a grab. Like, it's just bad news bears. And this is one of the instances as well, guys. I did mention that I wasn't trying to parry, but I happen to parry this guy a lot, and I'm not meaning to. It's just, the parry's so easy to do, you know? If I could turn the parry off, I would. If there was an option to turn it off, I'd just turn it off. I'm not looking for that interruption and that frame advantage. I'm looking to just block, but I'm getting parries because it's just the way of the world. And if you hold that against me, fair play, you know? There's always going to be that one dude that's disappointed. You can't please everybody. But look how fucking boring this is, dude. And then we get this wonderful execution, which actually saves it a little bit, because I like this. This is funny. And it's a pretty cool animation, too. I'm really looking forward to playing Ghost of Sparta, just to see all the improvements. Because I think Ghost of Sparta has a lot of the same enemies as this game. So I'm going to have a bunch of strategies going into that one, and it's going to be really, really fun. But now we have some archers, so kill the archers, and then we have a single Death Knight here. I don't know why one of these knights is called a Hyperion Knight, or a Hyperion... This is a Hyperion Knight, I think it's called that. Like, he's called a... What is he called? Hyperion Guard, he's called. It says on the wiki. And then this one is called a Death Knight. I don't really know why these two enemies are named differently, because the only thing that seems to be different is a colour scheme and like their weapon, right? They have the same moves, exactly. They don't seem to have any other different moves. And maybe they do. Maybe if somebody knows the answer to that, you can help me out. But it feels like they do the same thing. The only difference is the other guy like spins before he twirls, and this guy does one hit and then twirls. They're both one real hit into a twirl, aren't they? But technically they're different. Which, maybe back in the PSP that was enough. But I feel like they should have all just been Hyperion Guards. You know, this can be the Mace Hyperion Guard, the other guy can be the Sword Hyperion Guard. And I think there should have been a third one. Maybe give the third one like an axe. And then they could have had it so that you took on the other version, Hyperion, and the Death Knight, and then the Axe guy, and they were all like maybe different elements or something. I think that could have been interesting. Because I think this enemy, as much as I've critiqued the Sphinx, I think this enemy is equally as boring because it doesn't do anything. And I space him because I like spacing him. And this one, of course, the one big difference between Hyperions and Death is you get guard broken by this one, don't you? And the other one, you can block everything he does. So maybe that's enough to justify it. But even the difference between Cyclopses and Armoured Cyclopses, they have different movesets. And they look really different too. Maybe I'm just being pedantic. Maybe it's just because I think that these knights are just... I don't think they suit the game, really. As far as new enemies go, I think they're just kind of blasé. But once you kill them in that small room, you'll never struggle with that monster ever again. And I believe that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. The end of the game. Now the only thing left is the atrocious boss fight with Persephone. And I'll see you for the first phase of that because I'm not commentating the second phase because it's too long. Thank you for watching, and you take care now.